Lagos never sleeps. The horns of Damfo buses echoed through the air. Hawkers shouted prices for gala and bottled water, and the endless hum of engines filled the atmosphere. For Emeka, a taxi driver in his late 40s, the city was both a blessing and a curse. He had come from his village in Anambra 20 years ago, hoping to build a life. Yet, despite all his efforts, he remained poor, living in a one-room apartment in Ajegunle with his wife, Ngozi, and their only son, Chike. Every day, Emeka drove through the congested streets, carrying passengers from Yaba to Ikeja, from Victoria Island to Oshodi. But no matter how many hours he worked, money never seemed enough. His car was old, the landlord constantly threatened eviction, and his son's school fees kept increasing. That night, however, something unusual happened. It was close to midnight. Emeka had just dropped a passenger off at CMS and was thinking of heading home when a frail-looking old woman waved him down. She wore a wrapper that seemed far too heavy for the humid Lagos night and had piercing eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. "Driver, take me to Ikoyi Cemetery," she said softly. Emeka frowned. "Mama, at this time, the place will be locked." The woman smiled. "Just drive. You will be paid well." Something in her tone was commanding. Against his better judgment, Emeka agreed. The roads were strangely quiet as he drove. When they arrived, she handed him a small cowrie shell instead of money. Emeka wanted to protest, but when his eyes met hers, a chill ran down his spine. He accepted it. "Keep it. From tonight, you will not suffer again," she whispered, before disappearing into the darkness. The following night, Emeka's life changed forever. As the clock struck midnight, passengers began entering his taxi without him even noticing them wave him down. They were silent, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, and had an eerie stillness about them. They gave him addresses that often led to deserted streets, abandoned houses, or riverbanks. By the time he dropped them off, they had vanished, literally disappeared into thin air. Yet, every time he checked his pockets, he found crisp bundles of Naira notes. Within a week, his debts were cleared. Within a month, he moved his family to a better apartment in Surulere. Within a year, he bought a brand new Toyota Camry. Everyone in the neighborhood began calling him Oga Emeka, the millionaire driver. But his wife noticed something disturbing. Every night when he returned, his clothes carried a strange smell, like wet earth from a graveyard. His eyes also seemed darker, more distant, as though he was living in two worlds. One evening, Emeka's mother-in-law came to visit. The moment she entered the house, she sniffed the air and frowned. "Emeka, where have you been going at night?" she asked, clutching her Bible. "This smell, it is not of the living." Emeka laughed it off. "Mama, I am just working hard for my family." But Chike, his son, began to notice things too. Sometimes his father would sit in the parlor late at night, talking to invisible people. Sometimes he would leave the house without opening the front door, simply fading into the night. Curiosity consumed Chike. One night, he decided to follow his father. He hid in the back of the taxi while Emeka drove out. At exactly midnight, the first passenger entered, a young woman in a white gown, her face pale, her eyes hollow. Chike's heart pounded. He realized with horror that she wasn't human, she was a spirit. As the taxi moved through Third Mainland Bridge, more spirits appeared. Some were headless, some carried their coffins, some wept silently. Emeka drove calmly, as though this was normal. When they reached the end of the bridge, all the passengers disappeared, leaving bundles of cash on the seat. Chike nearly screamed. Later that night, when Emeka dropped off the last passenger, he parked by the lagoon and whispered, "I have fulfilled my duty. Where is my reward?" From the water rose a dark figure, half human, half shadow. Its voice was deep and chilling. "Emeka, you are now wealthy because you deliver souls to us. But know this, when your time comes, your soul too will enter the cab of another driver." Chike gasped loudly. Emeka turned sharply, spotting his son in the back seat. "Chike, what are you doing here?" Emeka shouted, his face pale. "I wanted to know the truth, Papa. You are carrying dead people," the boy cried. Emeka's hands trembled. It is the only way I could give you a good life. Do you think money falls from heaven? The living neglect the poor, but the dead, they reward the brave. Chaik shook his head. This is evil. Mama was right, you smell like the grave. We must stop this. But Emeka's eyes turned red. If I stop, we will lose everything. The house, the cars, the school fees. Do you want to go back to hunger? Chaik wept. Better hunger than to sell your soul. The next night, Emeka went out again, despite Chaik's protests. But something was different. The spirits that entered his cab were restless, angry. They whispered his name repeatedly, their hollow voices echoing. Emeka! 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 At the cemetery gates, instead of vanishing, they surrounded him. The cowrie shell in his pocket burned hot, and the shadowy figure appeared again. Your time is up, Emeka. You have delivered enough souls. Now it is your turn. Emeka screamed, trying to escape, but the spirits dragged him into the darkness. By morning, his taxi was found abandoned near Ikoyi Cemetery. The driver's seat was empty, but the back seat was filled with fresh bundles of naira. Chaik picked up the cowrie shell from the car. The moment he touched it, a whisper filled his head. Take the wheel. Continue your father's work. Wealth will be yours. He stood frozen. On one hand, he remembered the years of suffering. On the other, he remembered his father's tragic end. His mother called his name from behind, tears in her eyes. Chaik, don't touch it. That money carries blood. We can survive without it. Slowly, with trembling hands, Chaik threw the cowrie shell into the lagoon. A loud wail echoed through the night, and the money in the car turned to ashes. The moral. Chaik grew up poor but honest. He never forgot the lesson his father's greed taught him. Not all wealth comes from God. In Lagos, people whispered about the cursed taxi that carried the dead. Some said they still saw it roaming at midnight, driverless, waiting for its next victim.